All right, let's get this going. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Bit of a different situation we've got here today. We've got a couple of committee meetings. We have special closed parks meeting and special closed council and an special open council. So the order of the proceedings is going to be that I'm going to call them to order and then recess the open council and the closed council meeting. Then we'll have the open public works and transportation meeting chaired by Councillor Day. And then we will have the open Parks and Rec Community Services meeting. That'll be chaired by Councillor Au. Then we will go into closed session, we'll call to order the closed parks meeting, and then we'll have a special closed council and coming back into the open council. So that's the general scenario of what order we're going to do things in. So to start off the matters, I'm going to call to order the special open council meeting, and I'll recess it until after the open and closed Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting, and also after the open Public Works and Transportation, Public Works, and then the Parks, Recreational, and Cultural Services Committee meeting. And I'll call to order the special closed council, and we'll recess this till after the Public Works and Transportation meeting, the Parks, Recreation, Cultural Services Committee meeting, open and closed, and then we'll reconvene following the recess for the Public Works and Transportation Committee and the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services Committee open and closed meetings. With that, I will turn this, and the first meeting is going to be chaired by Councillor Day. The second one will be chaired by Councillor Au. I realize that, we can't move all the chairs around with all the arrangements. So they're going to, they'll keep a note for council. They'll have the speakers list. So just when you want to speak, just indicate on the panel as usual. And I'll control the mics from here, but it'll be chaired by someone else. So with that, we'll go to the open Public Works and Transportation meeting chaired by Councillor Day.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor Brody. So this opens our Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting for Wednesday, December 21st. Do I have an motion to adopt the minutes of the November 23rd meeting? Yep. And seconded? That's carried. The next committee meeting for Public Works and Transportation is January 25th, 2023, next year at 4 o'clock right here in Richmond City Council. The first item on the agenda is a delegation. We have Mr. Les Kiss, a Richmond resident, to speak on the city proposed bike pedestrian pathway for the south side of Steveston Highway. So if Mr. Kiss could come forward and sit here at the table, and I ask that the mic be turned on for him. Mr. Kiss, you have 5 minutes. Thank you very much for coming.
Last time I was here, Mr. McNulty cut me off a minute, so hopefully I can get a little further on it. But anyhow, as mentioned, my name is Les Kiss, and I live at 5251 Hummingbird Drive. I've been a Richmond resident since 1977, living close to Steveston Highway the majority of the time. I'm an avid cyclist. I'm not against bike lanes. I bike about 20-25 kilometers a day, and I estimate I've traveled about 5,500 kilometers, mainly in Richmond, just this year. The Steveston Highway, as you know, is an arterial route, and motorists tend to travel well beyond the posted speed at 60 to 70 kilometers per hour, and that includes buses. Unfortunately, I don't believe safety has been thought through on this particular stretch of highway, and it seems to be tied to transit funding that stipulates that this route must be on the south side of Steveston Highway. I don't believe that it's safe, and I've looked up standards in North America and Europe that basically indicate that these multi-transportation routes should not be located adjacent to highways. This proposal does not meet that test. Separated bike lanes should not be located on the same side of the roadway at frequent transit routes. This route doesn't meet that either. It's just 4 bus stops just in the section we're talking about. If pathways must be located parallel to the highway, there should be a 1.5 meter buffer. The proposal here says it's going to be 1 meter. It doesn't meet the standard. A path wider than 3 meters is more desirable for 2 directional use by cyclists and pedestrians, which this pathway is purported to do. The 3 meters is a minimum. And sidewalks should never be designated as multi-use pathways, and it's not clear to me how the current sidewalk is going to be used. Is it going to be ripped up, or is it going to be used as part of the pathway? It doesn't make a lot of sense. The pathway just ends. It should be leading somewhere. This ends at Shell. There's no connecting routes. It falls well short of the Ironwood development, plus the retail shops north of number 5 road. It goes nowhere. There's no north-south connections to it. And the proposed, I understand, I'm not sure on this one, but I understand the proposal also intends to reduce the traveled lanes, the 4 lanes on the highway. The minimum width for arterial routes is between 11 and 13 feet. This reduction up to a foot per lane puts it at the minimum, which again goes counter to safety. And I believe with the buses, if you've ever seen a bus or a transport truck on the highway, they take up the whole current lane. Reducing by a foot is going to cause some significant concerns for the people that travel that route. You're going to have not only speed, you're going to have distracted drivers, and that's going to cause more side swipes and potentially pushing it into the pathway. So it's not going to be safe for pedestrians, cyclists, or motorists, really, from my perspective. And I guess on the current infrastructure, the sidewalk, including a buffer for lampposts, is 8.5 feet. What are you going to do with the lampposts? Where are they going to go? Where are the storm drains going to go? If they're going to be in the middle of the pathway, that's not going to be safe for cyclists and pedestrians. It's just not appropriate in that kind of infrastructure. And to me, the math doesn't compute on the width of the pathway. With the current sidewalk and one meter for a buffer, it doesn't even meet the minimum requirements for a safe pathway. And definitely doesn't meet the requirement by even a meter for a safe pathway. And so, you know, I understand current councillors want to respect previous decisions, but in this case, I urge the council and the transportation department to rethink this proposal, because, you know, governments of all, whether it's provincial, federal, municipal, they change their minds when it's appropriate. And in this case, I think you should change your minds and decide on an alternate route. Don't depend on the transit funding. I mean, that to me is not proper. Do something with that money, either upgrade the routes, find an alternate route, or spend it on more important infrastructure for Richmond residents. And thanks for the opportunity. I didn't expect the full council here today, so.
Thank you, Mr. Kiss. I think we have a number of questions from councillors. Councillor Wolf, do you want to go first?
Oh, thank you. Through the microphone is on. Through the chair, thank you. My question is in regards to comparing the Westminster Highway multi-use pathway, which is directly to the south of another claimed highway. Lake Stephenson Highway is not really a highway in most minds. But what's your feeling on the buffer for that, the lack of city infrastructure that's in the actual multi-use pathway? And yeah, any other comments you have in comparing those two?
Well, my key question is really, what are you going to do with the current infrastructure in that section? You got 10 lampposts, you got 4 bus stops. I didn't count the storm drains because there's too heavy traffic to even measure the width of the road there. But Steveston Highway, in my mind, I ride a bike regularly, and I would not ride it even there just because of the reduced lanes. And it doesn't go anywhere. It goes to Shell Road, which the bike lanes aren't even finished there. I mean, there's a pathway for pedestrians, and south of Steveston Highway, there's no connection to the South Dyke for bike routes.
I have one follow-up then, if I may.
go ahead, Mr.
Do you use the current Steveston Highway like on-road as one of your routes?
No, I don't, because
Not
I
at all.
don't believe it's safe now, and I don't think it'll be safe when that pathway is there.
Thanks.
Okay. Are there any other questions from council?
I have my hand up.
Sorry, I didn't see you weren't on the thing.
Yeah, thanks. You've answered my main question was, is there any future for this in your mind? And I take it that your answer to that is really, this isn't appropriate, the south side.
It doesn't lead anywhere. If you take the pathway that's on the greenway on Railway, a lot of bikers use that, but there's interaction with pedestrians. So if I use Railway, I'll still use the bike lanes on Railway, because you never know what a pedestrian is going to do. And not only that, my bike is like 2 meters wide. I'm a little wider sometimes. And if you're gonna have two-way bicycles coming there and two-way pedestrians, it's gonna lead to chaos.
Yeah. All right, Madam Chair, I think what I'd like to do is to have a specific referral to staff to look at any projected pathways or bike lanes being constructed on Steveston Highway. When you want me to make that.
Do we have any other questions before we make a referral? I think
Councillor Hobbs has his hand up here.
Even through the chair, I'm not a member of committee, but I didn't see any other hands up. So when you talk about alternates, you're an experienced cyclist. You've been in Richmond a long time. And I know what I think about alternatives, but I'd like to know what you think would be a viable east-west alternative in that vicinity. What might work?
Well, you currently have Williams Road. I mean, that one has it on both sides, so it's safe for bicyclists, and you also got sidewalks on both sides of Williams Loke. The only problem there is that you might have more driveways coming out and people may not see cyclists. I think that the best route, I like the South Dyke. It connects to Railway. If you use the paved sidewalk, number 4 road and out towards Finn Slough, over to number 5 road. There's no bike lanes on number 5 road at this point in time. There is a pathway just up to Rice Mill Road, but it doesn't go any further. You could improve Rice Mill Road connection over to Sidaway if you want. I don't go through there because you're into heavy traffic again. So my favorite route is the South Dyke or Railway, going up to the North Dyke and then coming back around some of the dikes you've already got. But I would not ride on Steveston Highway just because of the traffic. It's too heavy, it's too fast, and a reduction in lanes, I would argue, will cause you more grief than what you currently have on Steveston Highway. Even buses go more than 70 kilometers sometimes on that road.
Sure, and just one follow-up through the chair, if I could. Yeah, many good points raised there, and I too have used all those routes that you've named. But in terms of more of a commuter east-west route, because when I do the Dyke or whatever, or Finn Slough, I'm usually out for a recreational kind of ride. So I'm thinking, if you're strictly thinking commuter cycling, east-west, would that change or prioritize one route?
I'd continue to use Williams Road if I'm going east-west, maybe upgrade some of those with the storm drains that are there on the bike path as well. But I would suggest if you're going north-south on Railway or if you finish the routes on Shell Road north-south, that maybe something like, you've already got Granville Avenue. You could upgrade Granville Avenue east-west as well, because it heads out to Westminster Highway. And, I ride Westminster Highway sometimes because it does have a wider bike lane over to 5 Road. But if you want to go back on 5 Road, there's no lanes there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Galanders has a question next.
Hi, thank you for coming. Thank you through the chair. Just a question about you riding on Williams. Because the one thing Steveston Highway has going for it on the south side is the lack of driveways. Right? It does have the lampposts and bus stops, but it doesn't have all the driveways that are on Williams. So if we were trying to really expand alternative transportation and get more commuters, because eventually it is going to connect to the new tunnel, it's going to have eventually it's going to connect all the way out to East Richmond, this east-west route. So if it could be on Williams, how would you see dealing with all the driveways as a safety issue?
I have never had an issue there. If you're a regular biker, you're going to be watching for people, and I don't know if you can improve it anymore. Maybe put more signs up that there is bike route because some people don't realize it. But quite honestly, the Steveston route, I mean, there aren't a lot of residential places on the south side of Steveston, and so I'm not sure where the bikers and the pedestrians are going to be using that route come from,
Yeah, I
especially
guess-
if they're concerned about safety. And again, I mean, if you're reducing the traffic lanes and you're not going, you've got a 1 meter buffer, I don't know how many avid bicyclists would actually use that. And currently, it doesn't connect to anything. I'm not too sure when it will connect to the tunnel. But currently, if this section, 5.7 million, and then you got the other sections, I'm not sure how much it's going to cost, but it's going to add up to a pretty tidy sum per bicyclist and per pedestrian.
Thank you very much. Councillor McNulty has a question as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not a member of the committee, but I do have a question. Obviously, there's no price on safety. I guess my question through you to the chair, and a suggestion with a possible referral, is in terms of would you be prepared to provide input with your fellow cyclists that are active in the community to give us some active feedback for those who, quote, potentially could use it and or use cycling within the community.
If you have a group of cyclists, I'd be glad to, but I don't know other cyclists that are there, but if you have a group, I'd be glad to participate.
Just a question to point to the chair. I believe if a referral's coming, we need to consult cycling groups. I'd never cycle on, I wouldn't even walk on Steveston Highway, never would cycle myself. But I think we should get input from active cyclists in terms of looking at connectivity versus recreation. Because that is a form of transportation if we're going across town. And the issue that Councillor Galander's brought up with driveways, et cetera, there may be some impediments, but I think we should be doing a thorough investigation on it from that point of view, from those who are actually and potentially going to use it versus those of us sitting around the table saying, yeah, we provide another kilometer of cycling, but we put everybody in peril. And we don't want to put everybody in peril. So I don't know what His Worship has in terms of the idea, but I would hope that there would be a public relations consultative request for input from the people like Mr. Kiss, who is actually out there, like he says, he's out there every day. Thank you.
And before we go to the motion, I just had a question as well. Given that you are out riding as much as you are, do you have any perception of what percentage of the cyclists out there are commuter cyclists? Because that's really what the Steveston Highway corridor was for, is people who use cycling as their vehicle.
I don't really notice a lot of people riding to work, particularly on I've gone out even now, before today, obviously, or yesterday with the snow, but most of the routes don't have a lot of commuter riders that I'm aware of. The majority of the riders that I see on the South Dyke, for instance, are big groups, 20 cyclists at a time. Not sure if they would use the Steveston corridor because that's too many bikes in a corridor like that. But on the South Dyke, if you have some connections north-south, I think the recreational bicyclists would probably still use that rather than Steveston Highway. But I don't see a lot of commuter bikes personally.
Good. Well, thank you very much for coming forward. Mayor Brody, there was a slight amendment, which was to your motion for asking for a referral to basically do a review process of the entire, the two projects, one from Railway to Number 2 Road and the other from Number 2 Road on. And Councillor McNulty has asked that we add communication to Hub and other cycling groups. Is that a friendly?
Well, it's not like I'm opposed to it. My suggestion, though, is that we have a review by our staff and a report back, at which time that we approve it in principle or we ask for consultation at that point. Just make sure that we think it makes sense and then, I mean, for instance, if we decide that it's not appropriate,
Yeah.
no need to consult on that, is my, or not
Have a-
much, anyway.
Do I have a seconder for the motion? Is that, did you want to speak before the motion, Counselor Lou?
I'll second it to put it on the table.
Good.
But I just want some clarification, because are we questioning the validity of having a path on Steveston Highway, or are we questioning the existing plan that staff has for the particular geometry of the path?
Well, if I can answer that, my thought was that we should examine the existing plan or plans, and, but that could lead to a discussion as to whether it's a go at all.
Okay.
But review what staff has in mind and what we've earmarked in the budget.
Okay, because I would support looking at the geometry of it, but I think it's a valuable path. Like, my kids and I were trying to commute to Ironwood a whole bunch this summer, and for us, that would have been a round trip, 6 mile or 10-kilometer bike ride. But having to ride up to Williams and then back down again, that adds 30% more. 30% more for little legs is a lot more riding for little people. To suggest that we're going down to Williams or over to somewhere else. So our option to bike ride starts getting stripped away. If we're actually trying to get people out of their cars, we need to slow down traffic. We do that by narrowing the lanes. There's a number of other things that we do. The actual speed limit on there is 50. If that's what we want people to be doing, that's what they should be doing. We shouldn't keep giving preference to cars, and we need to give preference to the safety of pedestrians and cyclists so that people will bike there. You say we hear from people that, yes, they don't bike on Steveston Highway. I'm one of those people. I like riding in a Peloton. I like riding on my e-bike. I like riding with my children. I also don't like riding on Steveston Highway. But that being said, why shouldn't I be able to ride on Steveston Highway? We should be building our city for us to get around and not only for people who choose to travel in cars.
If I may, if you could.
Well,
Sorry, I
Sorry.
should have excused you. You can go back.
Okay.
We're finished. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Just one question, Mayor. Can I leave this with the clerk?
please, if you could get that. The viability of the concept will be shown in the analysis.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if it's a good process, then it's going to go through with flying colors. On the motion to refer back, Councillor Wolf?
Yes, thank you. I have a couple questions to staff on this one. Just gonna answer, but first question is, in correspondence from Mr. Kiss to our Director of Transportation, it was pointed out the 1 meter wide boulevard, as was just previously mentioned, that is below standard. Yet the staff comment was that it would provide, with the raised curb, would be a high level of protection. Could you just comment on that?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I'm not positive the standard the speaker was speaking to. As far as I'm aware, this a raised curb and a 1 meter wide boulevard is actually a very high level of protection. We can see that throughout the region that lots of them are just white lines or just delineators. So on similar arterial roadways. So that surprises me. It'd be interesting to see what that says. I am curious because he did mention highways a number of times, and I know that while Steveston Highway is labeled as Steveston Highway, it's actually an arterial roadway and the speed limit is 50 kilometers an hour. And I don't know if that makes a difference in that and the analysis that the speaker was speaking to.
Sure, I just have a follow-up, and through the chair, also to comment that thank you for responding to the member. They have your contact information and you called out for them to contact you directly, so that's great. Second quick question is, would referring this back for a report, would that compromise any of the funding agreements that we have from other levels of government for these projects?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, it shouldn't. At the end of the day, those bits of funding are, they're just organized by time. We just have to spend them by a certain date. So as long as we get a report back and council likes it and we move forward, I don't see an issue there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
And Councillor Heed, you had a question to staff?
Yes, Madam Chair, you can just stay there. I have a few questions with respect to this, 50K 60 to 70K. I think they're going about 80 to 100K down Stevenson Highway. It's always been a problem. No amount of enforcement unless you have 24/7 radar by the RCMP, or you're going to get those people to lower the speeds. It's a shortcut route that's taken. It's a route to the tunnel that is taken. I'm not opposed to bike lanes. What I'm opposed to is having safe bike lanes, and I think that's the issue here. If we are to narrow the laneways, I don't believe in the evaluations that are done that we're going to significantly lower the speed of traffic by narrowing the laneways. We have this problem in Hamilton area where Councillor Wolf lives with respect to the money that came on TransLink and building that bike lane there, narrowing the road, and we've got big trucks on that curb that are hitting that curb continually. And I think if it's referred back, and, I'm going to vote in favor of referring it back to staff. We really need to look at the data that's out there, because in my experience, and I'm sure in Councillor Hobbs' experience, narrowing roadways don't necessarily change the behavior of the majority of drivers that are exceeding the speed limit, especially on Stevenson Highway. And this is a tragedy waiting to happen if, in fact, we start narrowing the roadways, we keep it 4 lanes on Stevenson Highway. We try and build in a pathway that accommodates cyclists and pedestrians. You just have to look at even some of the criticism with what goes on River Road from Gilbert to Cambie Road, where people are afraid to use that bike lane because it's so close to that narrow roadway. So when it comes back to staff, I'd really like to see a comprehensive review done on the safety aspect, as the speaker pointed out. If we have to expand, I don't know what if we're able to expand or move it over further. And, Councillor Liu is right. We should be having alternative modes of transportation and build a system for that. But realistically, by removing and narrowing the bike lanes and putting that in place, I think it's going to be a danger. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers to staff? I had a question of staff. So if the bike lane was just a bike lane and not a multi-purpose bike lane, so that would allow more lane for bikes, so potentially people could walk on the north side of Stevenson Highway and bikes. If we went in that direction, would the TransLink funding still be applicable?
Yes, Madam Chair, the TransLink funding would still be available and valid.
Okay, and would, in the review, it'd be nice to see alternatives, like what would the cost be for Stevenson Highway bike lane? What would the cost be for a Williams or River Road east-west corridor? So that we can, compare apples to apples and make sure that we're making the best possible decision. So, okay, that's it. So the motion is on the floor to refer this back for a review. All those in favor? Those opposed? So that passes with Councillor Liu opposed. Right. Okay, moving on to number 1, the capstan construction update. Staff have a recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is one update to this report, that construction on the station will be paused next week for the holidays and will resume on January 3rd. Staff are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, perfect. Is there any questions from committee or council? I have a question. On page 13, it says no additional complaints. Does that mean there was a lot more complaints prior to this new process?
Madam Chair, in the last phase of nighttime construction, there were 7 complaints received. Since measures were put in, those complaints have reduced. If there's additional details required, I can request Milton Chan to come and speak to that.
That's good. Well, it's definitely a touchy place because you're trying to, build a very important piece of infrastructure, but it is going to be disruptive to the people around there. The other question I had was on page 13, you talk about a bus bridge during night closures. That's so that when the SkyTrain or the Canada Line is closed, then you'll move people from, I believe it's Bridgeport to, is it Aberdeen?
Madam Chair, that bus bridge actually runs from Bridgeport to Brighouse.
Okay. So if people want to go to Aberdeen, they'd have to double back. Okay, got you. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from committee or council? Motion? Seconded? Perfect. All those in favor? Perfect. Thank you very much. That's passed. Item number 2 is from Engineering and Public Works Division. It's the BC Flood Strategy Intentions Paper. Very interesting document, I have to say. Did you have anything you wanted to add to your report?
Madam Chair, nothing further to add and available to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions from committee or staff? Okay, Councillor Luke?
Thank you. Through the chair. Thank you for this report. On PW 18, it talks about enhanced public safety, building communities to allow safe flooding. Do we consider safe flooding, and what does that look like in Richmond?
Through the chair, currently in Richmond, we would not likely have anything with safe flooding. This could be more in other municipalities where areas adjacent to the dike might say, or outside the dike might flood.
Okay, thank you. And also on PWT 22, action item 3.4, enhance pre-disaster recovery planning and post-disaster recovery, including Build Back Better. Who funds the Build Back Better? And if we did have funds tucked away to Build Back Better, shouldn't we just improve now? Or what does this mean, this Build Back Better?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, these are more for, I guess, the province when they're looking at items such as bridges, maybe to build them back in a higher elevation.
Okay, thank you. So in Richmond, we can have some comfort that we're building to the best that we can, to the best that we can afford, and we are not planning to have safe flooding, if you will.
Through the chair, correct.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Wolf, you have a question of the staff?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, my question is about the 4 staff recommendations, and I guess after reading the report and seeing some of the points that were highlighted, I was surprised that there wasn't maybe a 5th point that would be calling on the provincial government to support a habitat compensation program of some sort. It says that on the bottom page 18, that paragraph there, with the key environmental initiatives such as habitat compensation, it's an important step, but it's the delay and it's adding complexity and confusion, and it's leading to the extensive wait times for environmental permits. It then goes on, the next few paragraphs highlight other reasons that are for its delay or not happening. One is FREMP was pulled. One is the complexity of all the partners for coordination in this area. Another one is related to Transport Canada's proposed provisions. So do we wait for those? Will they ever come? And then the next paragraph talks about how urgent this is, yet we're not calling on the provincial government to add to those. I look in attachment 1, the priority program areas, again, nothing in there seems to be them acting on this need to help expedite flood projects. So I don't know what our staff thought on calling out for that.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, our 4th recommendation does look for an established resource so that the province can help coordinate multiple organizations. And this is where some of the environmental permitting would be conducted.
If I may follow up, I just don't, if I were to say it might be embedded in one of them, I thought maybe that, but could we not specify it and say what we're identifying is a major challenge? Because clearly municipalities are not doing it. I'm not going to propose it here, although I have wording for referral, but I think it can be hashed out a bit better at a council strategic planning session coming up. But I think we need to ask for the province to support dike upgrades and have a standardized approach so it's not left to municipalities to do it or not do it. I think there are some clear things that we could be doing in Richmond, but again, I don't know if it's, and I don't think this is the time and place to add it to our workload, because we do have strategies already approved that are ongoing for the next decade where we are claiming to protect ESAs, riparian management areas, and significant trees. And there are things that we can be doing, we plan to be doing. It's just, if we want funding, if we want the province to help make this a more standardized solution, then I think we need to call for it. And this is right after the UN Convention on Biodiversity ended, where Canada had a big role to play in preserving biodiversity, and I think it'd be a great time to put the wording in now and get some of the momentum on this project.
And Mayor Brody, did you have a question?
I think Councillor Howe was first.
It's hard to tell because you're not on the list. Councillor Rao.
Yeah, I just want to ask a question now. In the report, you mentioned that, before the early 2000s, so we have the provincial responsibility on the dike, flood control. And then, we as a city now take on the responsibility. And now it's going back to a proposal that it will be centralized. So what has been the experience in the past 10 years, that we are doing it on our own? Because staff mentioned that actually this has, if my interpretation is that this has created an opportunity for us to become the leader. So going back to the centralized model, would it be actually beneficial to us? So what has been staff's experience in that area?
Through the chair to Councillor Au, the centralized model will help with the permitting and approvals. So currently, we do need to contact various provincial bodies and including federal bodies, and sometimes these are not coordinated, and having a more centralized process would expedite that process.
But will it hinder us in other aspects, such as, if we set higher standards? Because my understanding is that our standard right now is higher than the provincial standard. So, will in the future that, there could be some hindrance for us to do our own things, setting up our standard, if we goes back to the centralized model?
Through the chair, the Richmond standards, again, are fairly good. We do have a good standard. We are leaders in flood protection.
But you don't think the new model would hinder us in some way?
Through the chair, we are proposing that it would expedite the process and would make it easier to have some more centralized permitting and approvals.
Mayor Brody?
I just want to clarify, my understanding was that we have a centralized model, or the proposal was to go to a centralized model, and our staff in the report is saying, stay with the local government funding, approach to it. And that's in reflection of the fact that Richmond is way ahead of almost any other city, as we found out a year ago with the atmospheric river. And I think that was your point. Are you saying that you want to go to the centralized model?
Through the chair to Mayor Brody, just to clarify that the centralized model is more about the permitting and approval. So currently, the province does play a role in the administration of diking, and we do follow that diking authority model currently.
All right, but then.
Mr. Irving would like to speak.
Okay.
Is Mike? Yeah. Is this mic on?
Oh, yeah, sorry, yes, I forget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just maybe to add to that, there is indeed, as the mayor spoke, a centralized model in terms of authorizing dikes. So when we work on our council-approved flood protection management strategy, the dike master plans, and go to build individual sections of dike, we go to the inspector of dikes for a permit to build those. They authorize when we change dikes. We would like to see the province take on further responsibilities with regards to funding our efforts and supporting flood protection across the board. We don't want to see a return to what they previously did, which was a centralized model in terms of the planning and design and implementation and construction of the dikes. And although that changed 20 years ago, really the last time the province did any significant construction of dikes, you have to go back to the previous century after the 48 flood.
Do you have any other follow-up questions, Mayor Brody?
No, I think, based on what I've heard, I'd like to just move the staff recommendation.
Okay, I had a couple of questions as well. What I understand is the centralized model is to fast-track things like environmental assessments so they can get everything going at once and not have to go through multiple government levels. Is that correct?
The chair, correct.
And then in PW 16, and it states that in 2004, the province shifted responsibility of the dikes to the city of Richmond. Prior to that the province owned the dikes. Who owns the dikes in 2022?
To the chair, we own and maintain the dikes.
Okay, good. And So on page 17, as was pointed out, Richmond has been successful in addressing and resolving the land use issues. And it sounds to me like we're still going to be in the driver's seat, but these amendments, these recommendations will allow us to move the ball quicker down the field. Is that correct?
Very correct.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Move the motion.
Second? All those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, thank you very much. That takes us to number 3, which is the manager's reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is an update from Transportation through you to committee. The existing crosswalk at Van Horn Way and River Drive was upgraded last week to a pedestrian-activated special crosswalk. This provides enhanced connectivity from the multi-use path to the Canada Line bikeway. Thank you.
That's great, thank you very much. Are there any other manager reports? Seeing, oh, a question from Councillor Wolf.
Not on that one, just if any other staff can respond. I just know a lot of residents have been using the Free Geek system or repair it. And over the next few weeks, there's probably a lot of people who will be getting replacement electronics. Does the city already seeing a surge in e-waste, or perhaps going to try and capitalize on some of the electronics that might still be used and maybe at the works yard, or sorry, recycling depot, maybe calling out a company to kind of take the role that Free Geek provided to residents? Any thoughts on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we do work with the product steward at our recycling depot, and those components are their responsibility. So we do accept the electronics at our recycling depot, and the product steward collects those on behalf of the agencies and the agencies that are responsible for it. And part of their component includes a reuse and clearing the information from them and repurposing where that is feasible.
Just a follow up on that. Will do some of those items be made available to the city of Richmond for when we have our next round of repair fairs? Like, can we kind of stockpile a little bit of every type of item that can be presented at a neighborhood event like this?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we don't do that. Our obligation under the agreement with the steward is that we do collect everything and it is returned to them. I think that's something that staff could explore with the steward for repair fair type events. I'm sure they would be open to that sort of thing, but that isn't what we do today. But we could explore that with them.
Great, thanks very much.
Okay,
I've
and
had one more question,
sorry.
on a different topic.
Yeah.
Real quick, and I don't think I saw the correspondence end, but maybe it's continued. But could staff who could comment on paving be available? So it's related to Hamilton area. There's been a number of complaints about the freezing temperatures, and now paving's happening, and it's not going to last. It's going to lead to cracked pavement because of the temperature below a certain standard when paving should be occurring. I know there was some staff reply to that, but I don't know where it ended up, and I haven't seen any work being done. So is it that we're pausing some paving projects until it warms up?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, when we are paving, we are adhering to the standards which do have temperature and weather requirements. Excuse me. And during that time, we were adhering to those. Obviously, in weather like this, we will not be paving. So as the weather has deteriorated, the paving is also stopped.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Heat, did you have some questions of staff?
Thank you. Yes, I do, Chair. This relates to the snow crisis we're in right now, and I had had a discussion with the General Manager, Mr. Irving, with respect to priorities here in Richmond of removal, and I put an example. So I think we need to reiterate what our priorities are with respect to what is going on. The roads look absolutely fantastic today here in Richmond, but yesterday was a bit of a different scenario, and I shared with some of my fellow council members the situation with regard to the parking lot at the Richmond Curling Club being completely cleared while Lansdowne Road was still in a quite a mess.
Mr. Irving's mic.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Heat. Yes, certainly in an event like we saw in the last 24 and 48 hours, it's an extreme snow event. We have council established priority routes, arterial roads basically, that the bulk of our resources go to clear. Over this event, we've had our maximum resources on the road. So that entails approximately 16 plow trucks that operate continually on 3 shifts to clear the arterial roads. And in that kind of snowstorm, certainly, you know, the drivers will tell you they'll pass down a couple of lanes and then return back the other way, and what they've just gone over already looks like they haven't been there because the snow is coming down so hard. So it certainly is a challenge in those kinds of events. The optics appear that yes, some things may be getting prioritized ahead of another, but that's ultimately the outcome of the application of resources. We can't take the parking lot clearing resources and use them to clear arterial roads. That requires the plow trucks. So you do see some of that, but certainly with every event we learn and we try to improve the operational response. One of those is going to be upcoming GPS tracking of these assets so that the public can actually see where the snow clearing is actively happening at any given moment. Something we're working on that's going to be outlaid with the further outlay of GPS equipment on these vehicles.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Hobbs, do you have a question of staff?
Just a quick comment through the chair, if that's all right, on the snow issue, notwithstanding the previous comments. I think it is important to just acknowledge publicly that I thought staff did a really good job overall on clearing the roads. I've even seen crews out clearing bus stops, and it was a huge snow event for us. But I think staff and people working on those crews have been putting in really long shifts, long hours, and not great conditions. And I think it's important that while it's always difficult to clear all the roads, I just want to state publicly that I think they've done a remarkable job under difficult circumstances and put in some long hours. So thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Galanders?
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say great job as well. I can see everybody working so hard. I guess I just had a question about Steveston Village. I went to Steveston Village this afternoon briefly to buy something, and all of the roads were still really bad there. And I guess a private, like a shopping mall, would have their own crews, like to do Ironwood or Seafair, right? So whereas Steveston is arterial roads, but it's kind of like a shopping mall in the same function in that all little stores. So it made it impossible to shop there. I felt really bad for the merchants. So I don't know if we can try to do something there better next year.
Mike,
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Galanders, yes, I mean, we have our council adopted priority routes, and you know, we'll be bringing forward a report to council, like we always report out every year on the snow removal process. We have our priority routes that we clear, and as we get those clear, we'll apply our resources to where they can be used. We'll get to local roads and some other areas where residents are seeking assistance or businesses are seeking assistance. Of course, in those areas, all property owners in Richmond are required under bylaw to clear the sidewalk in front of their property. Sometimes, obviously, if people are absent or whatever, there's challenges there, but we do see more and more people accessing the Snow Angels program and commercial resources to get those done with stratas and what have you. But we don't stand still after we complete the priority tasks. Then we go to assist where we can see that people are requiring that.
Thank you so much.
And I had one last question too, Mr. Irving. You had sent out a memo earlier, I think it was yesterday, and I didn't realize there were so many traffic cameras and traffic temperature sensors. And I had no idea there was that many. I'm wondering if that isn't something right now during the snow event should be highlighted on the very front of our website. Is that something that you could talk to ET about? Social media is a very good idea.
Yes,
yeah.
we can certainly put that out on social media.
Yeah, because I had no clue there was that many cameras. That was actually quite, and it was really helpful. You could see, oh yeah, they're moving, no problem on that corner. So it would make a decision whether or not to go out. So thank you for that. Are there any other managers' reports or any other questions from council? Okay, a second. Everybody in favor of adjourning? And that's it, we're adjourned. On to the next one.
Etc. meeting.
Okay, so I would like to call the Parks, Recreation and Cultural Service Committee meeting to order. May I have a motion for the minutes? Move second, call a question, those in favor, opposed, motion carry. Next meeting will be January 31st at 4 o'clock at the same place. Is there any additional deletion from the agenda? Seeing none, we go with the two items we have. So the first one is 2023 Engaging Artists in Community Program Public Arts Project. So anything to add to the report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing to add to the report, and I'm here to answer any questions.
The recommendation.
Move seconded? Good, okay. So Councillor Hobbs, you have a question?
Through the chair, well, first of all, thank you for this report, and just a couple quick comments on the process and the thoroughness of it. I thought it was a very thorough process, and I want to compliment you on also the transparency of that process. I don't think anybody could have any questions of that. I like the fact that other groups like RAC are included in observing the process as well. So a couple quick questions. First of all, there are some contributions made by different community groups. East Richmond Community Center, I think, is one. Is that typical for art projects to have that kind of extra contribution?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, it's not a requirement for this program, but we certainly see as part of the application process, some of the community groups top up the contribution. In terms of funding, all the community groups do provide in-kind contributions such as space, staff complement, artist materials, and in some cases, funding as well.
Yeah, that's a good way to achieve buy-in as well, literally and figuratively. One other question is when the call is made to artists and you get the applications, are they applying to any specific project that's part of it, or are they just applying en masse and then the decisions about which project artists will work on is made later?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, the artists actually submit specifically to each opportunity that they're interested in. So they directly apply to the opportunity that they want to be considered for.
Oh, okay. And just one last comment just about the funding of it through developer contributions and the art reserve for the operating budget. I just think it's good for the public to recognize that that is the way it's funded, and it seems to be working out very well from what I can determine.
Yes, this is part of the Community Public Art Program and is funded through development contributions.
Thank you.
Very good. Councillor McNulty?
Yes, thank you. Some of my comments were already made, so I won't repeat them. But I too was impressed with the expanded consultation on it, and I think that's something that we should continue to do. And I know you will do that. I was impressed with the diversity of art. A lot of people talk about traditional and in their minds, and I thought that, are we going to see more of that kind of thing that we see for today with the three projects?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, I hope so. We're definitely seeing different types of artists applying for these opportunities, and also different types of diverse community organizations that are taking part in this program. And they're animating anything from city parks to public open spaces to different facilities. So we're seeing art everywhere with many different types of the public as part of this program.
Well, obviously, we've seen that as well in the layouts of many of our new parks, the 5 new parks. You'd think an artist had designed it, and I'm sure they are artists in their own mind, so that's good. The process that was referred to on the call to artists, that's our standard process, is it not? That we've been following? That's our standard process of how we do things.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, yes, this is their standard public art process for selection.
Well, thank you. The 3 projects are an example of what makes Richmond a vibrant city, and we're leaders in it. So kudos all round to everybody in the department. Keep up the good work.
Very good. So the motion's already on the table. Any further questions? Okay, then I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, moving on to item number 2, Stevenson Community Center and Library Public Art Plan. So anything to add to the report?
I have nothing to add to the report, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Any question? Move second? Move second. Okay, so Councillor Wolf, you've got a question?
Thank you. Through the chair staff, just have one question. The best map or to look at is on page 48, where it kind of shows like a bird's eye view, kind of an angle of the site. My question is, I know there's a component of this item here on the signature outdoor artwork. So my question is, is this outdoor space that I see on this picture, is any of that like potentially an outdoor concert venue space where there's maybe like a central place that will be maybe electrified, so we're not bringing in generators? Like, is there already a location in the outdoor area that will have the capacity to plug in sound equipment, amplifiers, and that kind of thing?
Through the chair, to Councillor Wolf, perhaps if I can call my colleague, thank you, Jim Young, to speak to the plaza design.
Yes.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the current status of the design, we're approximately 75% complete the design of the building and the plaza area. And certainly the plaza area can consider all sorts of different amenities, and we're working closely with various different groups of staff to coordinate what the needs of that plaza could be at this point in time. So certainly a stage is something that could be considered, but we are still in the design development stage.
Okay, just to follow up then on this one, would that design stage be considered the signature outdoor artwork, or would that be an independent, like, is that not an art piece in its own potentially? I don't know.
Through the chair to Councillor, we would continue to coordinate our designs with Biljana and to land on what would be the most appropriate for that area.
Great, and then I don't have any more questions, but my other comment is that where we put the outdoor artwork, if it can be in some synergy with this outdoor venue potential, so that it can be like a backdrop of a large salmon or something, I don't know. But anyhow, those are my comments, thanks.
So Elizabeth wants to speak? Any further questions? I have a comment, on page 36 and 37, there's a table talking about the three types of art opportunities there. The first one is the signature outdoor artwork, I think is great. And the second category is the integrated interior artwork, I think also great. And actually the third one, interior artworks, community engaged. This is also good, but I just want to ask, instead of having a permanent artwork inside, can we also create a platform or, something that we can have some local artists displaying or, having some kind of exhibition for their artwork? So instead of having one permanent, perhaps, we can also having some more ad hoc or, temporary displays as well. So can we have both instead of just one?
Yes, so it's part of this program. We will have an installed artwork that's going to be derived after the completion of the facility with community engagement, and this will be more of a permanent artwork, but there will be opportunity for changing artworks, if you will. But I'm going to get another colleague, Jay Howard, if you can speak a little bit more about the programming of that space.
Sure, absolutely. This is my first committee / council meeting, so my name is Jay Howard. I'm the project lead with major projects for community services. So to the chair, yes, we're currently in the design phase. We've had some preliminary discussion around art and displays within the facility, which has included non-permanent displays as well. So we'll absolutely take that comment under advisement as we explore further opportunities as we progress the project.
Very good, yeah, because I really endorse the community engagement part of the plan, right? And then let's create more opportunities for everybody. Okay. Any further questions? If not, is motions on the table. I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Any managers report? No? Okay, so. Oh, okay. Councillor Wolf?
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, just a question. I know we did get an update on the fire on Richmond Ice Center, and I know some user groups that were back in there yesterday. Could we comment? I know there's some hesitation going into a building that had some leakage or what we again, we don't really know. Are we able to comment on, was the fire an electrical fire? Was it the tar on the roof on fire? Was it a gas line on fire? Just to kind of calm some of the nerves of people who are going in there and don't want to have ammonia leak or other flammable items. Thanks.
Jim?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yes, we've identified the fire was an old dehumidifying unit. It's a 2014 unit. We believe it was an electrical fire. And I'd like to assure Council that there are no associated safety issues with ammonia or any other thing that were there. The fire did take place late, just before the weekend. We had a great response from various different departments, a coordinated response from the various departments, community services, facilities. And while we sent out some specialty contractors to immediately occupy the site, identify what the issue was, as well as introduce various measures to take out the smells and the associated effects of the fire, and so that the facility could begin operating at its earliest possible opportunity.
Thanks, just to follow up then, do we have the same dehumidifiers of the same era on other city buildings?
Sorry.
Like, do we have the same type of equipment that caught fire here on other city facilities?
Through the chair to Councilor Wolf, yes, dehumidifiers are in places, say, like aquatic centers and the likes, and it's not necessarily that type of equipment that is prone to fire. It's generally something that may be aging infrastructure that we have in our facilities is that could be causes of future issues as well.
Thank you.
Okay, okay. So do you have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So
Moved. Okay, the meeting's adjourned, so we have.